and there you are. Okay? Welcome to this next part of your journey, this journey. It's an honor to be here with you as you start another chapter of Unity of Fredericksburg. I know you're at a new time, which is great for me too.
Yes,
and
yes.
You were going to be at a new place. And I was thinking about it, your consciousness is really home. The building's important where we can get together. That'll happen. So I'm glad you're here. I do want to let you know, Chris, what I see now is today's message, the ultimate perspective, which is okay, but I just want to let you know as you're doing the Facebook stuff. Okay, I don't see people. So when Chris asked me to speak, I wondered, what do I talk about the first message at this time for you, the first time that I'm speaking in this new year? And it's really the end of the second year of living with COVID. And this is what I decided to speak about. If you could put that picture up, Chris, there you go. There you go. And no, I'm not talking about animals who draw, and I'm not talking about the importance of wearing hats to church. No, okay? I'm not. We'll save that for later on in the year, okay? I decided to talk about our old friend, constant companion perspective, which affects our perceptions. For looking at things with a new perspective can change our perception, which is how we interpret things, the meaning we provide to our point of view. And oh yeah, our perspective affects what we draw, as you can see. And as always, I'm going to use a metaphor. Remember the parable about the blind men and the elephant? I remember we did something with that in third grade. I'm not sure what. But the story is about a group of blind men who had come across an elephant and they had never experienced it before. They had never known what it is, so they each touch a part, but they each touch just one part. And maybe you could put that picture up. The first felt the side of the elephant. The second felt the tusk. The third felt the trunk. The fourth, as you can see, put his arms around the elephant's leg. The fifth touched the ears, and in the back, the sixth one touched the tail. So they all compared notes, and they were in complete disagreement. The first who felt the side of the elephant said, "The elephant is a wall." The second, who got hold of the trunk, said, no. Who got hold of the tusk, said, "It's a spear." The third had the trunk, and the third said, "The elephant is a thick snake." The fourth, who put his arms around the leg, said, "You're all wrong, brothers. The elephant is a tree." The fifth had touched the ears and said, "You're nuts. It's a fan." And the sixth, who had grasped the tail, said, "What? The truth is, the elephant is a rope." Depending upon where they all stationed themselves, what they had touched, each concluded what the elephant was like. So all are pieces of the truth determined by their limited points of view, but no one saw the whole picture. Each blind man creates his own version of reality. The elephant is like a wall, a spear, a snake. And that version of reality leads to another perception, that an elephant is either to be feared, to be protected, to be watered, or that the elephant is to be called on when it's summer in Northern Virginia to cool us off because it's a fan. Our unique way of seeing life is determined by our experiences, our conditioning, our needs, our desires. Where we're standing creates what we see, how we see it. And while one subjective experience is true for them, based on one's opinions, one's feelings, One's perspective may not be everyone's truth, certainly not the totality of truth. Our sensory perceptions and our life experiences can mean limited access, can mean misinterpretations, partial blindness, which paves the way to how we interact and how we live our lives and live our interpretation of reality. So how can a person with a limited taste of truth turn that into the one and only version of all reality and expect or even demand that it's agreed upon by all? And then try to live in harmony with people who have different belief systems, people who've also tasted the truth, but a different one. Maybe they live across the ocean, so we'll send missionaries over to tell them the truth. Yeah, that's a good idea. Or maybe they're in our family or in our congregation. This parable appears in Buddhist and Hindu and Sufi, many traditions. The moral: humans have a tendency to claim absolute truth based on our limited subjective experience. Even though that experience might cause us pain, turmoil, despair for a lifetime, humans also tend to ignore other people's limited subjective experiences, which may be equally true. So, how do we form a more complete, accurate view of this intangible thing called reality, which gives rise to the truth? I'm going to let you think about that while I have a drink of water. Buddha gives us advice, tells us that we should not mistake the part for the whole. So not mistake the tusk for the elephant, not mistake a person's action as encompassing the totality of who they are, as defining them, and not mistake an individual for the whole group. Richard Rohr talks about the ultimate perspective, the perspective of God. And he tells us, whenever we open ourselves to the big frame, our little frame of reference shrinks into proper perspective or even falls away entirely. Eckhart Tolle has his own metaphor for gaining perspective. He describes it as viewing things from the balcony. Ralph Waldo Emerson suggests we see something from the highest possible point of view. And then Course in Miracles tells us to be lifted up above and from a higher place, look down upon it, to view the experience from above the battlefield. So again, I ask, how do we as truth seekers form a more complete view of reality, to see things as spirit sees them? We live the 5 principles. That as God's children, we're created in God's image, so we're divine. Our very essence is of God, and that spirit lives in everyone. Any thoughts that we have which differ separate us from divinity. Unity identifies Jesus as the man of Nazareth and Christ as the state of mind that he claimed. Christ is a name for the God mind and nature that is in all of us. Third unity principle, we create our life experiences through our way of thinking. We have choices. We have choice, we have power, not over what's happening out there or necessarily what happens to us, but rather how we see and interpret what's out there, how we perceive our experiences, our situations, our circumstances, and then what we do with that information. The third principle is really inviting us to change our way of thinking and to see things as spirit sees them. The ultimate perspective, the perspective of God. Great. But for me, at least, my ego sometimes bases it on the part, not the whole, bases it on my little frame of reference, not the ultimate perspective. I still mistake the tusk for the elephant, Now, less than I used to, but still a lot. Progress, not perfection. Still, this is how I often see it. At certain times, I am like the blind men. I may need to expand my view. I don't want to live with this as my worldview and make decisions based on this narrow perspective. Now, I think I used a straw here a few years ago to represent my tunnel vision. Props, physical reminders really help me remind me and help me. I carry a straw in my car. I keep it around the house to help me to enlarge my view. No, I don't drive like this. It's just that driving in Northern Virginia, sometimes I really do need to expand my view. This is a reminder. Back to the blind men. What if they went throughout the world to teach what an elephant was? So this one went to a few of you. So a few of you now believe that an elephant is a spear. This other one went to some others of you to tell you the truth. And the truth is that the elephant is a snake. But there's another one who went to another section of Fredericksburg. You know the truth. The elephant is a fan. In fact, in some versions of the fable, the blind men believe that the others are not telling the truth. They even come to blows. How familiar. The 19th century poet, John Godfrey Saxe, he created the poem of the parable with the final verse explaining that the elephant is a metaphor for God and that the blind men represent religions that disagree. I quote, "So oft in theologic wars, the disputants, I ween, rail on in utter ignorance of what each other mean, and prate about an elephant not one of them has seen." Dr. J. Lombard in The Mind of God says people commit so strongly in their exclusive belief systems that they even are willing to kill other people and themselves to make statements that somehow prove the truth of their interpretation of reality. What parts of ourselves are we killing when we cling to certain realities? When I am interpreting my current life from inside a belief system created long ago, I am likely to cause harm to myself, to those I love, to people I don't even know. And where do our interpretations of reality come from? We are conditioned by society's thoughts, so they lodge in us somewhere. From families' messages, from our experiences from long ago, from growing up in an urban, suburban, or a rural area, in a skyscraper, growing up on a farm. So we all have our beliefs about how safe the world is, about what I have to do to protect myself, about who I am, what I deserve, what I'm worth, and about who I have to keep a distance from and who I can trust. Tara Brach says it takes less energy for the brain, so we make flash judgments and stereotypes about the other who is less smart or kind or moral or worthy. But again, we are conditioned by society's thoughts and our experiences. But that doesn't take away our responsibility, does it? To pay attention, to work on overcoming that conditioning which separates us from another and from spirit. And I think that's why many of us come to Unity, for those reminders, to help us pause, observe, maybe question, and then choose again. If I pause, I might not jump on that runaway train of thoughts which lead to immediate reactions and quick responses. I don't know how that metaphor works for you, but for me, that runaway train of thoughts is so perfect. So pausing is crucial. It stops us from automatically reacting from our history with another, from making someone into the other based on their status, achievement, behavior, from responding in a way that's related to old messages we've imbibed about being unworthy or less than. And friends, pausing makes us stop from automatically reacting to those biochemicals racing through our bodies. That and our thoughts and behaviors are inextricably tied. We don't often talk about that. We talk about our thoughts. I really want to focus on the biochemicals racing through our bodies that go along with that. Because pausing puts us in the position of more easily recognizing a voice that unity has taught us is not us, that is not our higher self. So I'm able to choose again and access my higher self. Choose again. How many times have we heard those two words here? As Emmett Fox reminds us, we can choose the thoughts upon which we allow our minds to dwell. Today's daily word talked about taking command of my thoughts and actions, dominion. But for me, that choosing is near impossible unless I stop and pause, become aware of my thoughts, of what's going on in my body, again, my body. And for me, a lot of times it's noticing the breathing, which is shallow and quick. I get that under control. I'm much more able to get the thoughts under control rather than just starting with the thoughts. Perhaps then ask myself, might I be responding right now from shame, failure, embarrassment from my past? Is fear appropriate here? And then doing that without judging myself. Judging ourselves just creates more barriers. Judging ourselves only puts us back on that runaway train. If you've believed that an elephant is a fan, and then you realize you're wrong, be gentle with yourself. Tara Brach asks us, witness with the accepting eyes of a grandparent. The way to correct our distortions is to withdraw your faith from them and invest in only what is true. Course in Miracles. Withdraw your faith from your distortions and invest in only what is true. Perhaps even if you haven't decided what is true, go ahead. Withdraw your faith once you've realized you have a distorted view. I know for me, at times I'm kind of depressed. I also know that my thinking is distorted. So I have that perspective. Now, it might mean that we live in the hallway between the two doors for a while, live in that wilderness of not knowing, rather than clinging to the distortion as a way of believing that we know. Clinging to a distortion does not make it truth. It just makes it familiar territory. For suddenly at night, beneath the waters of consciousness, the stories we tell, the distortions we live, are altering our world. So, what story or distortion are you still telling yourself? How has that affected your peace? How has that been a barrier to love? This is what he did to me. This is what it means. This is what she said. This is what it means about her. And this is my experience with the elephant. This is what it tells me about an elephant. So my decision about what to do with an elephant, how to relate to it, is your perspective the ultimate perspective, the perspective of God, or Is it from a little frame of reference, coming from the little you? Henri Nouwen says it's easier to be God than to love God. Easier to control people than to love people. Boy, that hit me. Easier to be God than to love God. I'll add, it's easier to cling to one's perspective, especially if it's become one's identity, than to say, I've been wrong. I've been seeing this through a straw. W.H. Auden suggests that we would rather be ruined than changed. We would rather die in our dread than climb the cross of the present and let our illusions and expectations die. Letting our illusions die leads to consequences of being present to reality rather than deluded by familiar patterns. That can be scary. We need to remember that when our illusions and expectations die, we are receiving a correction and are being told that we do not see the whole truth of a situation. The Course in Miracles talks about that, about how we are receiving corrections. Farini, in his book, Love Without Conditions, tells us we are being asked to expand our perception. We are not being asked to judge or diminish ourselves. We are not being asked to feel shame. We do that on our own, our human, our lower consciousness. We are being asked to expand our perception. If I am not seeing the totality of this truth, help me, Lord, expand my perception beyond this. Help me see this as you would see it. Help me use the plasticity of my brain, or as Dr. Lombard says, this organ under God with the liberty to fall prey to demons or to follow a more healthful and productive path. We have that liberty. We have that choice to choose again. I might have shared an experience some years ago, an experience I had. And it's really helped me, and I use it in my life a lot. I was driving to work, and this driver was trying to get in front of me. And of course, I stopped to let him in, of course. And then I saw his bumper sticker. I did. A bumper sticker supporting a person for president that was different than the candidate that I was supporting. So I drove faster so he couldn't get in. I wouldn't let him in because I knew everything about him based on that bumper sticker.
That's right.
I knew everything about who he was voting for president. I knew how he treated others. I knew how racist he was. I knew what kind of food he liked, what his favorite color was. Based on a bumper sticker and a story I made up about him from that bumper sticker. I am so intuitive. It's a gift. It's a gift. I was touching one part of the elephant. In this case, his bumper sticker at the back of his car. Buddha's advice, do not mistake the part for the whole, the tusk for the elephant. I took action as I claimed absolute truth based on limited information from my little frame of reference, just like the blind man. I do that at times. How do I know that? Awareness lets me know. Awareness that's grown because of the unity messages, because of going to my unity church. Awareness that's grown because of Course in Miracles. I've gotten really, really good at awareness, and I've gotten really skilled at not smacking myself, at knowing I have choices. I don't always make a choice I'm proud of, but I've gotten good at the awareness and knowing I have choices. Back to this experience of driving. I'm glad to say, At this time, I realized what I was doing pretty quickly. After all, we're driving. I realized what I was doing and I chose again. I slowed down and I let him in. Not without giving them a look of, are you crazy? But I'm human. The human part of me and the divine part of me were working together. How quickly we make up stories in our heads, which then translate to beliefs, to actions, to what we say, to what we do, to making someone else the other, someone else as less moral, less kind, less smart, less compassionate than me. Those stories are from ego. Those stories are from the self that's separated from source, and therefore not the perspective of our divine self. We have the gift to change our thinking, the gift of changing ourselves. People often hope to change conditions without changing themselves. Emmett Fox. Can you change the presence of COVID or perhaps another circumstances in your life? Maybe not. Could I have changed his mind about who to vote for? Probably not. But if we look within, where we have control, we can change ourselves, our perspective, expand our perception, and find some freedom by using that power of the mind and choosing again. So back to our blind men, who have taught us not to mistake the part for the whole. For as Wayne Dyer says, we hardly know anything at all in comparison with what there is to know. So I guess we're all blind in some way if we refuse to move out of our little frame of reference and into God mind. So in ending, I offer my apologies to that 19th century poet, John Godfrey Saxe, on rewriting the last stanza to his poem. So oft in our internal wars, the disputants, I ween, rail on in utter ignorance with voices old and mean. They gab about who's good or bad, who's right or wrong, you see. But thoughts are prayers and prayers come true. So spirit, live in me. And now, if you would join me in meditation. Get yourself in a comfortable position, whether you're lying down or sitting down. I invite you to close your eyes or to lower your eyes. And whatever your position is, I invite you to be aware of the support that's being offered to your body. Support that you might not always be aware of. The chair, the floor. And notice your breath. No need to do anything about it. No need to regulate it. Right now, we're observing. Every breath is an invitation to life, to being alive. And we have a choice. Do we want to invite the breath to sustain us while we hold on to our little frame of reference? Or invite the breath to sustain us as we live from the ultimate perspective, from the perspective of God? Right now, I give up my narrow perspective. Right now, I give up distorted thinking. And right now, I am ready to expand my view. I invite the breath in as I claim the state of mind that Christ claimed. I invite the breath in as I affirm that my very essence is of spirit. And I invite the breath in as I sit in silence and observe from a higher place. I gently return to my space, continuing the breath of life, continuing to choose that I am the essence of spirit. For thoughts are prayers, and prayers come true, and spirit lives in me. And so it is, and so I am.
Thank you so much. We so love having you here with us and sharing your perspectives.